order. We'll begin with a pledge of allegiance. Flag over here.
Flag over in the corner.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
For everyone's and the audience's benefit, this is a special meeting, regular meeting of the Board of Directors. It is not a workshop meeting. It will not be interactive during the meeting. There will be an opportunity for public comments toward the end. And because it's a special meeting with a single subject, public comments must be limited to that subject. We have Dave Stevens on the phone. He had a little medical procedure done tail end of last week, over the weekend, and his doctor won't let him be here with us. You're going to have to be very quiet to hear him because I can hardly hear him sitting here. Dave, you want to say hello?
Hi, everybody.
Hey!
Dave, do you want to set the stage as to how you wanted this meeting to proceed?
Yes, I think first of all, we should square away what the limits of the meeting are, and what we're trying to accomplish. We're holding the meeting open in the public, or as a public meeting, but it does involve, or it may involve, discussions of a contract which is in negotiation. So I'd like to say that I believe that if we move in that direction, I don't know that we have to, but if we do, I think we should do that in closed session. Finish what we can in open session. But the terms of the contract, the conditions and so forth are still very much in the negotiation stage. And like any contract, of course, you conduct your negotiations with the people, the other parties, and not in public. I think there's several things. I think the basic outline of what has been offered by Leighton Moore, not talking about the details, has already been made public and is well known to everybody. Basically, he's proposing a long-term lease arrangement, 99 years to be specific, and to be in return for that, some amount of money to be paid to us, pretty much along the lines of our current leases, which, by the way, I think we're in 15 years now leasing that property to Leighton, correct me if I'm wrong, or in our third lease. But also a consideration of money, which, just to set the ballpark, is roughly in the area of $1 million over some period of time.
Wait one day, we're going to turn the air conditioner off.
That's the ice machine. The ice machine.
Oh, the ice machine.
Pardon?
There we go. Okay, continue.
Yeah, I think that's been everything I'm saying, I believe, is in the public domain. But cut me off if I'm crossing over anything. The other thing is as part of the consideration, and again, I'm just going over the general thing, not the contract itself. We would retain use of the property. So although we use it, we would either retain the parking that we have now or an equivalent for the term of the lease. There's a number of questions that have come up. We've seen several different versions of the lease. It's safe to say, I think, that lease to go forward still needs to be negotiated and finalized. That's to be done. Okay, the second thing is that in order to go forward, I believe, and if there's anybody that disagrees, again, speak up, that in order to go forward, the board must send this out to referendum. I believe that the amount of money, looking at the bylaws and the total amount amount of money involved in the deal, which is not only just the consideration, the one-time payment, but also the lease terms, you know, the annual payments under the lease terms, you know, far exceeds the bylaw threshold of 20% of annual assessments. So in other words, we must go to a referendum if we're proceeding on this. I think that's a given. I haven't heard any contradiction to that. I think of where we stand right now, there's a question, has been raised a question as to, well, what is this really worth? I mean, what's the real value? There has been a suggestion that we get an independent assessment. Tom Olson has gone out to several different sources for that and has some quotes. One of the things, therefore, on the table is whether or not to proceed with that independent assessment. I believe, in general, things that are on the table are the independent assessment. We have not, as a board, basically up to this point, this has been a low-level activity conducted over a period of time in discussions between the general manager and Leighton Moore. We have not met with Leighton Moore to discuss our questions face-to-face. That's a possible item. We have met amongst ourselves to discuss and outline some of the major issues, but I think, you know, it's only profitable to do that if we satisfy ourselves by discussing it with Mr. Moore before that. That is to say, Leighton Moore, not to confuse Moore. I believe that the contract negotiation is of a nature that we may wish, as we've done with the community hall, to seek some expert help in finding out and actually negotiating the terms of the best contract we can get. And at a certain point, we have to make the motion and we'll take a vote to send it to referendum, or a motion not to. So I think where we're at right now is trying to, I believe the purpose of this meeting is to see if we can find a way to start the process and agree on that. Not to get into the details, but simply to, get the information and set a time schedule for getting the information and moving forward on it. Okay?
Thank you, Dave. Any board members have any comments on?
Yes, sir, I do. Dave is Ray.
Yeah, right.
As you may know, and I've made it clear that I'm not really in favor of Ocean Pines selling or giving up control of any of our assets at this time, because I don't think it's necessary. To me, this looks like an unsolicited, as far as I'm concerned, unsolicited lease that has been proposed to us that we're really considering here. And at this point in time, to consider whether I think we should have at least a head count of the number of members of the board that want to proceed with anything, if it's necessary to do. And if there's a vote of positive they want to proceed, then we take it from there and do the best that we can for OPA. But I think we really should get an idea of how many of us here are for moving forward to do anything on this.
To do anything at all?
Yes.
I think that's a legitimate request or suggestion, Ray. If I think, in my mind, I believe that this is a very serious offer. I mean, it's something that has to be, I believe, taken very seriously. I believe that if we're going to simply say we're not going to consider this, or at this time a majority of the board does not believe we should proceed with this, then someone should make a motion to go back to Mr. Moore and say that. Make a motion, we'll discuss it, we'll vote on that motion. That is to say, a motion not to proceed with with pursuing the offer. And I think that would end it right here. Or I think we can end it today. I almost prefer that the motion be made since we're only a week away in the regular meeting, but either one I think is acceptable, isn't it, Bill Z?
Surely, yes.
I'll be glad to make that motion.
Okay, Greg.
I second it.
Okay.
Discussion.
Well,
Let's write the motion down.
The motion, let's get the motion on a piece of paper.
Yeah.
Right.
Oh, yeah, very definitely.
Specifically what you want to say.
So this is not a straw vote, this is actual motion.
Yes.
Ray, your motion would be that the board reject any offer to lease or purchase the Bayside lot?
I would think it'd be
We already have a lease.
I would say to reject the lease presented to us in its current form.
Well, that just leaves the door open for him to come back again.
Well, he always could, certainly come back and offer 15 million, you know? I mean, you know, you can't stop the future.
Right.
Well, I think I heard that business about the current form, and I think we already accept that the lease has to be negotiated, that we're talking about pursuing, basically setting a tentative timeline for a referendum process. We're talking about collecting the information, which would include negotiating the best possible lease terms that we can get. I mean, we're going to do that. We're going to, if the board approves, get an independent assessment of the value of the deal to us. And we have a proposal, which would do that if we accept it. But to say that we're not going to accept the lease in its present form is really not solving the problem at all.
No, it isn't. It has to
You
be
want to
very-
put it to sleep. Am I right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
But the motion would
It
read,
would be very simple. Motion that the board of directors reject the current offer from Bayside property.
no, that does not put it to sleep. I think what you want to say, my recommendation would be is that the board proposes, might be the wrong word, the board agrees not to pursue leasing or selling the Bayside property.
Okay, that's fine.
It's already leased.
Yeah, so we,
Well,
It is currently leased.
long-term lease.
Well, what's long-term?
that's why I said the current offer. The current offer changes the current lease that we already have.
Well,
Go ahead, Les.
you can define long-term as anything in excess of the leases, the 5-year leases that we have now, if you wanted to.
Dave, this is Les.
And we have a lease right now. We're not breaking it. I mean, so.
That's right.
I think the long-term lease offer, okay, and you can put in 99 years, is what we're talking about.
Okay, I can understand exactly where you're coming from. I don't know if you're in favor, but you did second it. But I understand Ray's motion on an emotional level. We don't maybe need to do this. And perhaps what we have here is not appropriate. It's not up to snuff. We don't know that. That's my problem. If to stop it now, I don't think it does the neighborhood, the association, any good, really, to just stop it now, because perhaps if we get the best possible lease offer that we can possibly get, it might be something that's acceptable. I have to agree that this one isn't, okay? But there's a lot of other things involved. I don't know whether we need to go in closed session to talk about them or not, but I think we owe it to ourselves, in my opinion, to find out exactly what the best offer that we can get is.
Dave, I know we ought to be having this discussion, but may I add my 2 cents?
Yeah, this is the discussion period for sure.
I mean, well, there may be a consensus of this board, and there's for sure probably a consensus of the people in this room not to sell, lease, give away, do anything with the property. We have no idea what the membership wants to do. No idea. I thought this meeting was about the referendum, not whether we're going to sell it or not sell it. I don't believe that 7 of us have the right, duty, or authority to make that decision. It's a legitimate offer. It ought to go to the people who have the right to make that decision. And if we don't, I hear acceptable offer. Acceptable offer to who? Me? John? What's acceptable offer to Joe Reynolds? I know. Nothing. There's no amount of money. But there may be an acceptable offer to somebody that lives in Section 10 of $50. This thing should go to referendum.
Board of Directors does have the authority to lease or sell property.
Not over $1.3 million. And this deal's worth about, hell, by year 25, it's worth over $2.5 million.
Possibly, yes. We also lose control.
What control do you have over the next 4 years? What control have you had over the last 18?
The challenge we're going to have if we continue down this road is we're going to have to discuss the offer placed in front of us.
Absolutely.
Because otherwise, we cannot, to our constituents, make an informed decision without them knowing what's in this current lease.
Rather than discuss it anymore, let's get a vote on whether we move forward or not. If we move forward, we move forward. If we don't, we don't.
Okay, we better define what moving forward actually means.
I would
Motion on the
think.
I
table.
think
Moving
moving
forward
forward,
means-
in my mind, means getting basically setting a tentative timeline for a referendum and getting the required information for that. Now, by the way, if you start that, you make that motion and you start to move forward, that doesn't mean you can't stop. I mean, if we find that there's no way, that we get information, let's say from an independent assessment that says, hey, you guys are crazy, or if we find out that there are sticking points in the lease negotiations that we can't overcome, we could decide that, hey, this is, we really don't want to spend the money to go to referendum. But going forward to me right now means making the assumption that at some point, well, first of all, we have to let the people decide that if we're going to do it. I mean, it's going to have to be a referendum.
Absolutely.
But there's nothing in our bylaws, Marty, unfortunately, maybe, I don't know, that forces us to take the thing to referendum. I mean, the reverse doesn't apply. And, Bill Zawacki, correct me if I'm wrong, but I can't read anything in our bylaws that says we're forced to take it to referendum. So if we have a motion that says, look, we don't want to consider this deal, period, and a second, certainly we can vote on that motion, I think. Now, by the way, just for purposes of discussion, separate, agree with Marty. I feel this is a very important thing, and I think that the people ought to be involved in it. And my idea would be to do what we did on the community center. I mean, simply let the people know what the information is. I mean, try and put no spins on it and say, here's what you'll get, here's the conditions, If we want to work out pros and cons, fine. Just put out the information and say, what do you think? And take a vote. So if I understand your motion, Ray, it's saying, let's not do that. Let's stop it right here.
Actually, I don't think the motion's ever been actually placed on the table, has it?
Hasn't been placed on the
It hadn't been
table
placed in
yet.
table in writing, no.
Yes, it has.
Well, but it wasn't been,
Yes, it was seconded.
Yeah, but what was the motion?
I'll suggest some language
The
for it.
first motion was that the board reject the lease presented to us in its current form.
Yes.
And Dave said that does not solve the problem. John seconded that motion. Ray said he wanted to amend it to say, the board agrees not to pursue leasing or selling the Bayside property. He would have to agree to that second.
And he wouldn't, since we're already in a lease.
I'd suggest a substitute motion, and I've got some language here. I'm not going to tell you it's final, but I was just writing as we were talking.
Go for it.
That the board agrees not to consider a 99-year lease of the Ocean Pines Beach Club lot on the Beach Club Bayside parking lot. That the board agrees not to consider a 99-year lease of the Ocean Pines Beach Club Bayside parking lot.
Is that agreeable to you, Ray?
Yes.
John?
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's agreeable to me, but it still leaves the same kind of problem of what, how about an 88-year lease? I mean, I think everybody understands what we're trying to say here, okay?
Well, the 90, this Bill Rako that was.
Hi, Dave.
I think, you know, another board can make another motion and consider an 80-year
Right.
lease, you know, next year, for that matter. But what we're saying is basically we have the offer, we know it's 99 years, we know the very rough terms, and I think what Ray's motion says is, look, we don't want to take this to referendum, we don't want to pursue it, and let's just shut off the negotiations right now. Go back to Mr. Moore and say thank you very much. We enjoy our working relationship with you very much.
And still do.
And but we're not. But we as a board are making the decision not to pursue the.
Yeah. Well, I wrote something up too, Dave. I said, you know, I move that I being Ray, move that the board of directors terminate negotiations with Leighton Moore to execute a lease for our Bayside property in excess of the existing lease for a 5-year period.
I think that says. Yeah. Okay. Just borrowing the English at the end. The 4 or 5 year period is just modifying the existing lease. I mean, that's.
It clarifies what it is to those who don't know what it is.
Who is supposed to know? Okay.
And Ray Ray said he'd accept that.
Yeah, I think that's the motion, and
yeah, I don't have a problem.
terminates it now.
And how would you know?
Okay, so if you we'll say, I move that the board of directors terminate negotiations with Leighton Moore to execute a lease for our Bayside property in excess of the existing lease.
Dated the
That's the
31st of
replacement
October.
motion.
Yeah. Dated, the existing lease dated when?
31st of October.
Dated October
2008.
31, 2008, period. How's that? I move that the board of directors terminate negotiations with Leighton Moore to execute a lease for our Bayside property in excess of the existing lease dated 31 October 2008.
Now,
That's pretty clear.
I take it that you're suggesting that Ray withdraws motion and make that as a motion,
He just did.
Yeah.
and he just did.
And John,
That's not your motion.
no, John agreed to the second.
Great.
It's an agreed modification of mine, Dave.
It's the same motion, but
Yeah, I think it's definitely clearer. So I mean,
Okay.
I think. Okay, now we still have discussion. We had Marty's view on it. I think we had Les's view on it. Any further discussion on it?
Call the question.
Yeah.
If nobody else will, I will. I don't care. I think it's too important to dismiss, and I think we need to. I really believe that it's something that we need to pursue. I believe that if saying that we don't need the money or that it's not an important factor in our finances is incorrect. In fact, I believe it can have a significant effect in terms of moderating future assessment increases, if not keeping them.
well,
So I believe it's important. I think the money is significant. I believe it gives us a continuation of the leases that we've already had good success with. And I believe that more importantly, we can't see what's going to happen down the future, but you know, I think it would be an opportunity lost. I mean, potentially a significant opportunity lost. If you know, one can look at, you know, hey, maybe that property will really go up in value. But you know what? Maybe that opportunity will go away completely too. We don't know. So anyway, I definitely, I'm not saying I'm for doing it. I am saying I'm for taking it, pursuing it, taking it to referendum.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, I'll call the question. All in favor of the motion, which in effect would stop all negotiations at this point in time, raise your hand.
My hand is not raised, Bill, for the record.
Okay.
Motion loses.
Motion is defeated 3-4.
You didn't take a vote against it.
Yeah, there might have been a,
Could have been a tie.
could have been, yeah, all those opposed.
Opposed to the motion, raise your hand.
My hand's raised, Bill.
It's 4-3.
It's 3-4.
Now we move
Okay.
on.
All right.
All right.
The next item that Dave had
Can I
mentioned.
have a record of who made the votes?
Who made the motion? And Bill?
John, Bill, and Ray voted for.
Okay, good. All right. Now, given that basically says we're going to pursue it, I think the next question becomes how. And there's several items. I think, to me, at least, well, there are two major items. One is we have to figure out a way to negotiate the best possible lease terms that we can have or we can get from it before we take it to the people. Secondly, it has been suggested that we get an independent assessment of the value of the deal, which is a little different than just an assessment of the value of the property. Tom has gone out to 3 sources for that. Tom, did you distribute any information on those proposals?
Started calling you up.
No, I did not, but I do have all 3 proposals. And I will certainly make copies of them.
We have a qualified sheet that's already.
Well, if the board hasn't seen those, I've seen them, but that was just sitting in your office. I think that ought to be moved as a subject for discussion in our regular workshop meeting. I see, well, let me ask the board. I don't know, Bill and whatever. Do you see any reason that we can't make this decision in open session?
Well, this is Bill Rako. I'll give you an answer, but I think the more information we have, the better we're able to make decisions. However, let's say we spend $5,000
Yeah, that's a good round.
to get somebody to give us an opinion. He's going to give us an opinion based on his perceived uses. And how do we know what Mr. Moore intends to use that property for? I mean, if he plans to use it to assign it to somebody else and build a Marriott vacation center on it, then that becomes extremely more valuable if he can't get that property than if he just gives an opinion based like any other appraiser would. So, to me, it's information that may help, but I'm not sure I want to spend $5,000 to get that kind of help. It's not my money.
No, we all know it's not our money. But on the other hand, that doesn't mean we don't spend association money to get information. And, you know, basically, no matter how you cut it, we're talking about a 99-year deal, and none of us, nobody has a crystal ball. What we have to do is look at it in terms of, what the lease will specify, what we will get out of it, both the monetary deal and the use of the property. One of the difficulties with evaluating this kind of a lease is we lease it to them. But on the other hand, we basically get to continue to use the property or its equivalent for the entire period of the lease that's built into it. So what is the value of, what is the value of that to us? The value of it to Mr. Moore? I don't know.
Dave, may I? Now, I don't want to discuss this lease because it's still, I guess, held. But there's a paragraph in our old leases. It's not in the new lease, but it's in all the old leases. I think I can read it and not jeopardize anything.
Absolutely.
And it should be added to this lease, and it closes the door on about 80% of the what's going to happen next.
Yep.
Under paragraph 3, to be added from the 04 lease all the way back to the day 1, the property hereby leased shall be used for parking only, and the leasee shall use the property for no other purpose without the prior written consent of the leaseor. End of story. It ain't going to be a Marriott.
That'll
It's
sure
not gonna be a
change,
new
that'll sure
restaurant.
change the lease we got right now proposed to us, won't it?
It just one sentence, I'm sure it accidentally fell out.
That's not a lease that I made with son.
We're right back to your motion makes it.
But we don't know that.
We don't know that.
Unless we go forward, we don't know that.
And what,
Dave?
we will not find out until we go forward. And we sit down with Mr. Moore and say, look, here are our problems. Here's what, now by the way, I would, in the way of manner of going forward, I would suggest that the board, we have a meeting with Mr. Moore, that we address issues face to face, that after that, write down a list of what our issues are, that we assign a negotiating team, similar to what we did for the Community Hall Task Force, and that we ask them to hammer out the best terms, given our guidance to the best terms that they can get, that Mr. Moore will agree to. We'll come back, and that's the lease. All right? At the same time, I personally believe, although I share Bill Rako's concern about what we'll get, but I do believe that an independent assessment, given the magnitude of this deal, is certainly worth $5,000. But we can decide that independently whether to do it or not to do it. Okay, having done that, then I think we have to decide, we'll proceed with the referendum. The people decide themselves. Here's what I feel is, you go out, you decide. I don't know, I have no problem with letting the people and residents of Ocean Pines read the information and see for themselves what they think they should know.
Not the residents, the membership, please.
The membership, I'm sorry. No residents.
Well-
Membership.
I think let's have a closed meeting and discuss all these problems. Let's meet with Leighton Moore and see what he wants to do before we spend $5,000 on independent assessment.
Agreed.
Because we might say no, and if we've already spent this $5,000 for an independent assessment, we waste the money.
Well-
If we think everything is great, which I don't think we will, but if we do, then if we have to get that information, okay. Another thing we need to get is this survey people have been talking about, because we need to know, there's been talk about some problems on encroachment, which I haven't a clue whether that's true or not, but we need to know that.
Yeah, that's true. Whether it's relevant, I mean,
It would be relevant, I think. It
maybe.
would be very relevant.
You think?
Maybe.
I'd like to be part of this team.
Maybe not, I think, probably, but.
Oh, yeah, it'd be relevant. But anyway, there are so many other parts of the lease that, like what Marty said, if we could limit his use to nothing but the current use, well, that's interesting.
Let me ask about my suggestion. I can't see 7 of us sitting in a room hammering out lease arrangements.
Well, I think we have to discuss the lease among ourselves first.
I think, okay, I got you, John. Do you believe that the next step might be a face-to-face meeting with Mr. Moore, between the board and Mr. Moore, a closed meeting, to basically hammer out our concerns.
No, that's the second step. The first step is for us to sit down and discuss all the things we've learned about the lease and get our thoughts together is step one. Step two should be then meeting with Mr. Moore and see what his thoughts are.
First we get the questions, then we get the answers.
Yeah, get the answers from him and get his input, and then right from then and there, it might be a non-starter. If he's going to, say he's going to build a big parking garage for a hotel or something, we don't know what he's going to do. We have no clue. By the way, I have no idea that's what he's going to do.
And we won't until we box it up.
Yeah.
And in back.
So the first step should be, we meet and discuss this, maybe a couple experts in the room with us. The next step is meeting with Mr. Moore, and then we decide what the steps are after that, such as independent assessment and things like that.
Everybody, may I?
Yeah.
Everybody keeps calling for a new survey. I got an 01 in my hand for Ocean Pines. Does anybody believe that Leighton Moore hasn't had a survey done since 01?
He did in 05.
Well, why don't we take a look at that one?
I have looked at it. I think Tom has it, don't you, Tom?
Yeah, I have it in my office.
Is that a meets and bounds survey or just a typical survey?
Is it a what survey?
Meets and bounds?
That's a survey.
That's a survey. Have we in fact looked at it and seen any encroachments? That's what the question
Are
is.
there any encroachments?
But a meets and bounds is the only one that will clearly show the encroachments. The other ones will not necessarily do
What you need
that.
is a site plan, not a survey, to show what's sitting on the
Meets and
property.
bounds.
Yeah.
Well, unless you got, if the corners are marked, you can go walk it.
It does not show any encroachment.
Because I don't see any.
And yet but nonetheless, I'm confident that there is encroachment. Having seen it, Mr. Moore already knows that there is encroachment.
Great. then-
There are
then-
encroachments?
I know that this fence right here comes into our property a little bit, maybe more. But
That's
this is
correct.
simple. Have him provide us with a survey as part of the lease. An acceptable survey, meets and bounds.
Yeah. The encroachment is towards the back of the property, and it doesn't interfere with any possible use that we can have, but, it's there. And
What is it that's encroaching? A fence?
there's a large sound wall that he apparently had a permit for which was put up. And I guess, Marty, you said that the sound wall was put up to protect the hotel, which he now owns.
Yeah, he owns the hotel now. He put this wall up because Atkins was ripping his heart out about the noise.
Yeah. So there's a large sound wall, and again, it's all the way back towards the bay on the side of the property. There's also a stone wall in the path coming from our property into it that looks to me, I'm pretty sure it does encroach. We're talking about 3-4 feet. Again, this is all towards the back of the property, well away from the parking. There's no, so what you want to make of that, I don't know, but
I think this first meeting we have, and we talk about all these things, we ought to have our Mr. Moore in there, sitting there too.
yeah.
Is that our Mr. Moore or his Mr. Moore?
Our Mr. Well, yeah,
Well, who's he
representing?
Who does he represent? I mean, I think we might want to have an attorney there, but I'm not sure that,
Yeah,
I'm not sure that we want an attorney that works for Moore and us.
I agree.
If I may, I agree we need an attorney there, but I don't think it's Joe Moore or his type. If we're going to have an attorney there, we need a commercial real estate attorney to represent us in this deal. Because we are dealing with things well beyond a typical contract lawyer taking care of things.
There are very good reasons that you're absolutely correct. The interjection of that sentence and that phrase that Marty suggested in there, I think would negate the contract because we have no idea what his long-term plans are or what he's going to do.
I mean,
Well, we know what ours are, the best for our membership.
That's exactly right. That's what I'm talking about.
however, as you read the lease, the new one is drastically different than the first
Yes, it
draft
is
that we were
indeed.
given.
Yeah.
And it clearly indicates to me that he's had a commercial real estate lawyer sit down and draft this for him. We need the same type, we have to sit down before we even go to first base with Mr. Moore, is decide what we want in our proposal to him.
Well, you just gone from spending $5,000
No.
on one guy to spending $10,000 on another guy.
A lawyer will work from anywhere from $200 to $300, you could probably put time on, but this is a lease that's gonna last 99 years, impact upon our members for 99 years, and just remember what we currently get now, the heat on the MediaCom lease, which is only 15 years with a 15-year note. We have to be very, very careful, and if we're gonna do this, make sure that we've covered every base. And if that means we gotta spend $15,000 of association membership money to protect us, then I think we should. If we don't think spending that money is worthwhile, then we ought to back off, because what we currently have in front of us is a very one-sided lease.
Who wrote it?
Well,
He did.
again, you're getting into...
Well, but we've been negotiating with him.
You're getting into...
That's why I was trying to cut it off at the point.
At all. There has not been a single piece of information coming out of the board back to Mr. Moore. It's only been in one direction. In other words, we've given him no suggestions, no direction, no nothing. No negotiation at all at this point.
I disagree.
So, I mean, it's all been amongst ourselves. So, you know, there's hardly, you can hardly even talk about it as a contract or a proposal.
I disagree with that statement. I believe in one of our open sessions, I made a couple of comments that I strongly felt that should have gone back, saying we needed some things clarified.
But we did we?
And they were not clarified. They remained the same or worse.
They're not in this state, but they've been clarified.
We have...
If it's not written down
It's not clarified.
It is not clarified.
Well, you know what, John, you're correct. And by the way, if it's not written down and agreed on by the board, it doesn't go back to Mr. Moore either. I mean, you can make all the suggestions you want, John, but, you know, unless we as board say, okay, here's what we want, here's what it is. Well, I'm just pointing out, John, we haven't done that. I think we're in agreement.
Well, I agree. We haven't done that. The question is, when are we going to do that? And the other thing is, when are we going to put together a team to do it?
How are we going to do it? and that one still hasn't been resolved. I mean, how do we avoid getting in, just doing a repeat of the same session that we had the last time? I mean, I believe at a certain point that, we should get some people that are competent to do the best that they can, and let us become the decision makers based upon what they come up with, rather than us individually ironing it out. I think we need to have the meeting. I think we need to get information and get a feeling for it. But other than that, and I don't know who yet, but I believe that we ought to turn it over and let somebody do it for us.
But if I made my motion now, it might pass. Go ahead.
I agree.
And I believe it worked.
We need to give them a counteroffer. That's what we got to meet them.
It worked very well for the community hall when we did that.
Yeah.
And we may not like it, what the result is, but nonetheless, you've got to have a way to get there, and that's what I'm looking for. I almost don't care what the way is now, as long as
Dave, something you said, not wanting it to happen is not a reason not to have a referendum.
I believe that is true. I believe that is true. In other words, if we ironed out the best, or have had somebody iron out the best lease they can, say this is acceptable to Mr. Moore, it's the only thing that's acceptable. That's not a reason, and we don't like it, that's not a reason not to send it to referendum.
Well, I think we've got to be very careful when you look at this from a philosophical standpoint. Because now we're beginning to say we are willing to give up our assets totally. Absolute power.
No. We're willing to let our membership decide what they want to do with their assets.
But it's not true.
Well, the membership has to make a decision on accurate and complete information.
That is
We
true.
couldn't do that now.
No.
I agree. I'm just saying philosophically, we're opening up another can of worms. And that someone else could come in with a proposal saying, oh, by the way, I can save $1 million here by doing this. Let's open it up and send it to referendum to the people. That could be the golf course.
Yippee.
I think we need to
You
get,
know anybody that wants a golf course?
Doesn't have to be. I hear people say they want to park.
I think we need to get whatever the board believes that is an acceptable lease.
I agree.
If-
But that can't,
if-
should that be all 7 or should?
Well, wait a
that
minute,
be-
let me finish. If 4 believe it's not an acceptable lease and 3 believe it is, and you're one of those, and you think we should still go to referendum, right?
Yeah.
Well, I think the board needs to vote on that, and I think if the board votes we don't, we don't. If we vote we do, we do.
Well, there'll be a vote on that when we get there.
Yeah, when we get there.
There was just a vote that you were on the minority side of that said that we're going to pursue this.
And I accept that.
Okay, fine.
You know,
That's all.
let's go.
How
Let's
do we
move on.
pursue the lease?
I think, Dave, I think you ought to appoint, based on our recommendations of different people, your body to, first of all, we need to meet. We talked about that.
Yeah.
Then we need to
It
meet
should
with
be
this
closed.
body
I hate to say
of
that.
this negotiating team that you suggest. I know people in the community who have done this for a career, who, I know one guy who would love to be on this thing. He's a contract negotiator.
I would expect
Who would that be?
that between, or you and Marty would have some, I have some ways and sources too, but I think you and Marty, I would hope would point to those people. I mean, I'm not in the real estate business. And,
I bet you he would
but I
charge.
think we need some,
Okay, well, let's do that.
I think, okay, that's a start. So are we generally agreed that at least we're going to try and find this independent body?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay,
But
so,
we're going to try to do it in-house, volunteer, no $5,000. We have some of the best in our membership.
Do we have a commercial real estate lawyer?
Oh, yes.
Okay.
well, the second thing is that, okay, and I said you heard you saying no $5,000, but Tom will get those proposals to you. You can look and see what it is that they're proposing. There's a big separation between the three of them, and frankly, in my reading of it, I thought the 2 lower ones were not worth the price. I mean, you would get what you paid for. And the higher one, which was around $5,000, was at least hitting on what issues and some of the issues are. So at any rate, I still think we should consider those, and we can put it up for a vote and then decide not to if we don't want to.
I'm willing to do it. I mean, is there anybody,
Yes, definitely.
you?
Yeah.
How about you? How about Dave, you, Ray, and I? Anybody else? And Bill Rako,
What are we doing?
just get together, try to get this down to a next to last cut. Get everybody that wants to put in feedback, put in feedback. I haven't been asked for any feedback on this lease, and I've got pages of notes.
Yeah.
And just so
right.
in case you, I'm not tooting my own horn, but I know more about ground rents than anybody else in this part of Maryland. I'll bet on it.
Well, it's sort of tooting your own horn, but a little.
Well, I mean, I do. I mean, I worked for Carl Freeman Associates for 12 years, for God's sakes.
But, no, I agree. Okay, we've got the regular board meeting next week. Let's set up let's do something before then if we can.
Fine.
Friday?
I'm out of
This week is not good for me.
I don't think we need to call another board meeting. Who wants to be involved in this? Obviously Marty does, and
I don't care.
Yeah.
Quite honestly, if somebody will take my notes, I don't
do
care.
because I'm like with Marty, believe that this thing needs to be needs to proceed. I just want it, to keep moving
I'll
until
be there, no
we're
matter
close to
who else is
stopping
there.
it.
Yeah. I'll be out of town, but I don't see a big rush to get it done before this next board meeting. There's too much to talk about. It's just my opinion.
I was going to ask the same question. What is the,
Okay, how about this? Okay, how about I'll be the, since I'm not doing much of anything, at least for a week. How about sending in comments on the current lease to me? I'll be the coordinator of it,
Done.
recorder. Okay. Also, how about sending in suggestions as to people, who might form this panel, which I call the negotiating panel, for lack of a better name like that. Okay.
That's fine with me.
Okay, after that, once I think we get all the comments in and get a feeling for what they are, and I'll either condense them, summarize them, but one way or another, or not do anything, get them out to everybody should get everything anyway. But I'll try and, do what I can about narrowing them down. Once we've got that and some ideas on the panel, then let's set up I think the next step is to meet together prior to a meeting with Leighton Moore. And that meeting would be basically closed and would talk about specific points in the contract and questions that we have. Okay, we try and formulate those, meet with him face to face. I think everybody needs that. And after we do that, and then the panel, we would basically outline our concerns, let the panel do the job of negotiating with us. I mean, that's sort of the process that I see. And at that point in time, we would bring it to a regular board meeting and look forward to starting the referendum process, if in fact that's what we vote on.
So is there a deadline, Dave, as to when they should do those submissions so that you can appoint that contract review group?
How about within the next 2 weeks?
How about within the next week? On Friday the 19th. They're either going to look at it and do it or they're not.
Yeah, okay, we're talking about your comments. Okay, that's fine with me. I mean, I can handle it. It's not a problem. And the other thing, and let's try and look at the names and see who we can get and what your suggestions are. I'm talking about maybe 3 people.
Dave, let me clarify one thing, because I think it's getting a little confusing to me anyway. We talked about the first step being this board as a total group meeting somehow to discuss everybody's proposed changes to this thing.
Okay, I think we're in lieu of that. What we're going to do is send, well, at least not in lieu of it, we're going to send them in.
Right.
I'm gonna outline them and do what I can to condense them. Say these are the main points, and then we would have that meeting to discuss them if we all feel it's necessary.
Yeah, but following that was a proposed meeting of all members of the board with Leighton Moore.
Yeah.
To clarify our point of view to him personally, and to clarify his point of view to all of us personally.
Right.
And then following that would be when it would be turned over to somebody to actually sit down and hammer out the details, and obviously for both sides after that to submit it to their legal counsels before anything would come back for any kind of signature.
That's true.
And once it was finalized and had gone through attorneys and so on, would then be voted upon as to whether or not it goes to referendum.
Yeah.
All right.
I believe we have here's the best lease deal that we can. I am, still strongly of the opinion that whatever the bylaws say, it really shouldn't be our decision to make. But, what board members say. Okay. I think that's the process.
I still have a very, very basic question.
Yeah.
I am not fully understanding why we are doing this. What is our plan to do with the $1 million that we're getting? I hear Marty say in 22 years it's worth $2.5 million or something to that effect. It leads me to believe that we're going to take that money, put it in a bank, and let it collect interest. I hear another idea saying that it may very well be going to this, to this, to this, to this. I think we owe it to our constituents to understand that if that $1 million is coming in, we need to be able to tell them what we're going to do with it. Otherwise, why are we doing this?
I agree.
Well, the million is coming in not all in one lump, too.
Well, it's coming in over-
1,000 a year for 5 years.
Yeah.
Let's don't get into all the detail.
Yeah,
That's something
that
we
is a
discussed.
detail, but there's, I don't know, I can tell you, you know, what I believe is, I don't believe it's gonna be designated for a project. And we just passed the budget, okay, where we said, for the next 5 years, we determined what our needs are going to be. Now, some of those are still, we don't know exactly. We don't know whether we need the bridges or we do need the bridges. We don't know whether we're going to get money from the state for it or we're not going to get money from the state for it. We thought the yacht club might be a $500,000 renovation, and now it looks like it could almost possibly be referendum level. We, on the other hand, we have a big cipher. In other words, what we did was we said, here's our needs above and beyond the assessments that we're charging right now. Okay, then we spread those assessment increases over a little bit over a 5-year period of time, so in any given year they'd be more palatable. Okay, but they're still there, still in the budget. What I'm saying is that if we get this money, and let's suppose it's incremental over the 5 years, fundamentally there's no specific thing that we do with it. It basically is used to lower the amount of increase, the amount of money that the residents have to spend in assessment dollars. That's what it's there for. And it doesn't, because that 5-year keeps moving, we're always in this process. It's not like it only benefits the people in the next 5 years. It benefits the people, because your assessments are lower, it'll benefit the people in the next 10 years too. It's not, what we do is we determine what we need independent of whether or not we get this money or not. We'll need, you know, we only find out what we need to spend. And so we don't make up something new to do with the money just because we got it.
Dave, I think in a long statement, what you said is we're going to use the money for revenue. Is that correct?
We're going to use the money for revenue.
Thank you.
Dave, let me, just correct me if I'm wrong, I think I have this down to a time schedule. The directors are going to get to Dave by next Friday the 19th. Their suggested changes and comments on the existing lease before us, as well as suggested team members for the negotiating team.
Good idea. That's fine.
Then the negotiating team will get together with you and prepare a final draft, which will get back out to the 7 directors for their,
You missed a step.
what was missing?
I want to get together with Leighton Moore.
No, that's way down at the bottom. We don't have a contract yet.
If we don't get together with Leighton Moore and discuss in a macro sense what he might accept and we might present, we're just wasting everybody's time.
I believe that, Bill, you're correct.
I mean, if we say, like you said, Marty, you say, look, we want you to meet, you know, we're going to get this property back in 99 years, just like it was. You can't do anything with it. He should say, wait a minute, it's a non-starter. I'll see you guys. I'm leaving.
That's all gonna be in writing to hand.
But we need to know that before we start playing around.
I don't want to string the man out anymore.
You know what, we've already had this discussion. You can talk about it all you want, it doesn't amount to a hill of pee-pee.
But if he says, I'm not going to agree to that, he picks up his thing and he leaves. Oh, you're right, but then we put it in writing afterwards.
Well, why not put it in writing and say, here's
Let's
our...
not waste his time or ours any longer.
Okay, let me say, Bill, it's not, I guess, I sort of believe that the meeting with Leighton Moore is not for us to negotiate the contract, but rather it's to ask questions
Right.
that only he can answer.
Exactly.
Now, if you don't like the answer, that doesn't matter, because we're still going to negotiate the contract. But on the other hand, you have an opportunity to meet him and talk to him face to face. And, you know, you can gauge his intent. It's information coming to the board, which I think the board should have. I think the meeting is important. I don't think it's about negotiating the contract, though. I think let the panel do that. We'll tell the panel what our concerns are afterwards. Say, go to it. You know, I'm worried, you know, Bill, you were worried about, John, you were worried about this, and say, go get the best thing you can for us.
Well, somewhere along the line, he has to accept a contract that we're handing back to him.
That's exactly right.
And that contract is then subject to a referendum.
Well, or he will say, here, I'll accept this part, but I don't accept this, will you accept this? And it goes back and forth half a dozen times.
That's right, but not between
Mike?
the board, for
I don't
crying
think so.
out. I mean,
I think there's gonna be deal killers. If we tell them it's parking only,
let
you
the town
probably
work it
say.
out, and let the town will come back and say, this is the best we can do. I mean, and, once we've seen that, board members can make their own recommendations. But I agree with Marty that, unless there's some horrible problems with it that people can point to, then I think the people have a right to make their decision.
Well, that's going to come to a vote. I mean, simple as that. But I still say that if we don't meet with Leighton Moore and understand some basic things in this contract, we could be wasting a lot of time. Because the contract, here we are, we're trying to talk around the subject. The contract is not even with Leighton Moore.
Actually, it is.
No, it's not.
Mine is.
No, it's not.
Leighton W. Moore Jr.
No.
Or his assigns, or his hairs, or anybody else you might want to get
You wanna
into.
go back to 19,
Doesn't make a difference.
every contract we ever had with him is what
Yeah,
it
again,
said.
you're getting into...
We're getting into details, but the point I'm trying to make is until we decide what he means by this basic stuff, we're wasting people's time.
Well, I think, he doesn't have a crystal ball for 100 years either. Nobody does.
I mean, you can ask him what he wants to do with the property, but he's not gonna live for 99
He
years.
knows what's gonna happen 10 years down the road.
Absolutely right.
He's not
He
waiting
did
for
not
that.
have signs in the early one.
Yeah.
That's why I wanted to cut this.
And this has been left out.
I mean,
He's already had it.
Well, I think we got the basic thing lined out. I think the meeting is in there. Let's take the first step first, which is which we can get the comments together. Comments will provide sort of a framework for the meeting with Moore. And again, it's not a negotiating meeting. Just ask him what he thinks, or get a feeling, one-to-one feeling, and get him to answer your questions. Let him find out what he knows, what he doesn't know, and then come back and hand it over to the negotiating team to do the best they can.
okay.
If you want to follow that's okay. But clearly, the way it's currently written, he can tell us whatever he wants to sell us. The day after we sign this lease, all bets are off. If it's currently the way it is.
We can't accept it the way it is.
No, but I mean, unless we are willing to take certain words out of this,
If he's not willing to do it, then we need to vote again.
then we need to vote again. Because there are things in here that are clearly says the day after he signs it, he has absolute power over this property.
Well,
Absolute, it's in the lease.
As if he were the owner.
As if, and it said so.
again,
He's got that right under the existing lease.
No, he does not.
Oh, yes, he does.
No, he does not.
I don't think you ought to be talking about that.
I mean, again, you're
I think it's
getting...
important that our constituents understand where we're going with this.
I mean, the fact of the matter is, if we have an offer on the table, I mean, there has to be, why cannot we put the question to the membership?
We have an unacceptable offer on it.
Now, why cannot we put down the objections to it, the possible objections to it, the pros and cons, whatever, all the information we have, and say, look, membership, decide on this.
Well,
Okay.
we can do that, but we have to make sure we spell out all the conditions and all the unknowns so the membership understands. If we just put it in big print like the slots thing, this is for education, then, you're going to vote for it.
No,
But
I think we put it more like we did with the community hall bill.
Actually, I don't see any reason why, once we negotiate what we're going to do, you send the whole proposal out to our constituents and let them take a look at it. And let them make their own decision.
Well, John, in a referendum process, something like that, or very much like that, would happen. We're going to have a town hall meeting, and people are going to get up, and they're going to have seen this thing, and they're going to, at that point in time, and they're, going to say, yes, all kinds of questions, more than you have.
Well, but if we tell them, Dave, that the reason we're doing it is so we can reduce future assessments, I think we're going to get a positive vote.
We're talking about money now that doesn't exist, okay? I remind you of the story of the real estate agent that went to the little old lady who owned a house in the middle of the field and gave her $50,000 for the property because he knew a railroad was coming through.
we've got to find out what Layton's intentions are before we go any further
Who
down.
cares what his intentions are? What are our intentions?
we just
Ray,
Yeah.
I have to agree with Marty on this. It is not what Leighton Moore wants to do with the property, because after you sign the lease,
He can
based
get it.
upon it is his for 99 years. I can give you my reasons why I think he wants it, from talking to commercial real estate folks.
Yeah.
Okay? However, it doesn't matter.
The conditions got to be-
The conditions have to be for us.
Okay.
$10 million plus 49 parking spaces.
$10 million. It's
49.
getting better by the minute.
Yeah, we got more parking places. Yeah, well, anyway, I think we're pretty much at the end of this meeting, are we not?
I hope.
Sold.
Any other?
Any further things from the board? If there's no further discussion, we need to have public comments.
Can I ask you something? I just saw this agenda for the first time. Is it inappropriate to mention something off this agenda real quick?
For next week's meeting.
Yeah. A lot of people are doing email. I'm not in the email thing this week. The electronic billboard, Marty Clark, I didn't put that on the agenda for this meeting.
It was put on there for you because it was original.
No, we decided we couldn't get it done this summer, so I just pushed it off the plate.
Okay,
We got public comments?
we'll just knock it off when we
Thank you.
adopt the agenda. Public comments. Norm, we're just going around this way.
Greg, I want to thank you for the subjects that you brought up. Because it partially answered some of the questions that I had. I don't think that Ocean Pines has ever been run by referendum. It's been run by the board of directors. And you have no problem being decisive in the past on decisions that were also long-binding and meaningful financially. And I think it's a cop-out when you don't want to make a decision and say we have to have a referendum. There's two issues here, the way I see it. One issue is whether the board is in favor of a long-term lease approval, period. Okay. The second issue is if you are, then does it meet criteria for a referendum, or if it doesn't, if you want to put it up for a referendum. But you're copying out when you're not making that decision. Okay, and by having the vote, at least I know 3 of you are against it. At least that's what I see. I see Dave Stevens explicitly said that he wants to have the referendum, and that's why he's voting for this. The rest of you that voted against Ray's proposal, I have no idea what you think. As I said, being repetitious, but you have the responsibility to make those decisions and to be transparent about it. Let us know how you feel as a board of directors. As to the issue itself, I'm against the proposal. I hope the board will consider my objections, and I guess what I understand from the discussion, it's probably going to come up again whether you want to go to referendum. But here are my objections, and whatever they're worth, and some of the numbers I'm going to mention here are not explicit. They're based on what I already know, what's in the lease, so they're not precise. But whatever way you want to massage those numbers, the basics of what I have to say is about the same. First of all, in my opinion, $1 million is not worth giving away the control of that property for 99 years. It's beyond our lifetimes. It's beyond the lifetimes of our children and our grandchildren. And it's illogical to assume that the property is only useful to OPA for parking for generations and generations. Despite the current economy, history tells us that the value of that property will increase with inflation. The value of that property will increase with the depletion of other property in Ocean City. So neither you nor I nor Clayton Moore be around for 99 years. And it's unfair and unnecessary to tie the hands of future boards and to tie the hands of future property owners. Now some people believe who had a bird in the hand, and in this case, supposedly $1 million, is worth two in the bush. Well, from a financial standpoint, I think it's a bad deal. Property is assessed at about $2.5 million. We are proposing to lease it for $1 million for 99 years. That, in effect, is just like selling it for $1.5 million below its market value. A better deal, I don't think you should sell the property, but a better deal would be to sell it for $2.5 million. And that would give us the same so-called bird in the hand of $1 million. In addition, it will give us $1.5 million, which at 5%, which will generate $75,000 annually. Current secret lease only generates $35,000. So if you really want to effectively sell the property, that's what you're going to be doing in a 99-year lease, you might as well sell it for $2.5 million, put a parking easement on it. And don't give it away for $1 million. Some of the local newspapers have reported in regard to the OPA's 10-year plan, and proposed renovations to the yacht club and country club and other facilities, that we will need an additional infusion of funds. And it goes on to quote Dave Stevens, stating, quote, "I believe we can say that without the revenue from the secrets lease, assessments would have to go higher than they would without the lease." Now, I think that's a scare tactic. I think it's disingenuous. What the heck are we paying so much money out of our assessments to build up our reserves for? Okay, if we need $1 million from that lease, okay, to facilitate the renovations of our facilities, then I would suggest that our revenues, our reserves, grossly mismanaged. They also suggest that operating losses and budget deficits are also mismanaged. I think we should use our current financial assets efficiently instead of giving away physical assets. We don't need to give away that property for $1 million. Thank you for listening to me.
Man,
No,
why not?
it's not a workshop.
I can make a comment to a public comment, can I not?
Not normally.
What?
We normally don't.
Well, what, next?
If you do, let's have a course discussion then.
No, I think it's important. You know, I'm not gonna get a debate with Norm Katz, but the fact is, 100% of recent board voted not to have a referendum, and 70% of the membership approved that referendum. So you can't say that the 100% of the board mean that it's a cop-out to hand it back to the membership.
I didn't say.
Because there's a judge in this particular county that disagree with that theory.
No, there's 3 of them that didn't cop out.
All right, that's,
The other 4,
there we go.
3 of them I don't know if they copped out. One of them I know they did.
No,
Dave Stevens.
That's the problem.
That's, you're right.
That's
You're right.
Enough.
Next.
Anyone else?
I have so much to say.
She has to
And now-
identify yourself, Linda. Who are you?
I forgot, oh, Linda Earl, O-E-H-L. Norm covered.
Property?
What?
Where do you live?
Oh, 13 King Richard Road, Ocean Pines,
That's for her.
21811.
Where's your
I
phone
had
number?
an awful lot of things to say, but Norm covered a lot of it. One thing that I want to ask you guys, how long, I know that the board tries to do things in a timely fashion. How long do you think it's going to take you to make up your minds and vote and get a new contract signed with Lakeland? If you don't think that you can get it through before the August meeting, we're going to have a whole new board. We could have 1 new member, or we could have 2 new members. Those 2 people might feel completely different about it, and then they're going to be stuck with what you guys decided within 30 days. So Ray may get re-elected, he may not. We have 2 people I don't know. Dutch is running. We don't know who the membership is going to vote for, but they deserve the chance to at least be involved in these negotiations, in my opinion, because they're the ones that are going to have to feel the brunt.
So no board should conduct any business after June because there's an election coming up?
No, that's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is, if you don't get this done, if you don't get it done and closed in a rushed manner and have a referendum before August when the new board comes in, I think that you should slow down and wait. I think it's too important to rush.
I agree, but this has been going on now since I got on the board.
That's what I'm saying. It's not going on forever.
It's not being rushed.
Well, it is because you guys obviously can't make a decision about it.
That's for sure.
It's not that.
So
It's not
what
that.
makes you think that within 30 to 50 days, that it's all going to be resolved, contract's going to be written, you're going to meet with Leighton Moore twice, you're going to meet with a high-powered attorney that knows commercial law, and you guys are going to get back together again and make a decision?
Linda, I did not hear anything about 30 to 60 days having this done. I'm not sure where you get that
No,
figure
my point is it going to carry over to the new board?
from.
And if it does,
And if it does, it does.
well, don't they deserve to be a part of it?
At that point in time, they would become
At
a
that
part.
point, but not now.
Well-
They're not negotiating. They might have a completely different feeling about it.
Well, that is the reason why
But
Linda,
until
we're
they're
having,
elected, they don't get to say what their opinion is.
Right, well, they do. I mean,
Linda, that is why we're having a team as a project management team to put this thing together.
But you're going to send your comments to Dave, and Dave's going to interpret them the way that Dave wants to interpret them, and that's what you're going to get back.
I did not hear that from Dave.
You didn't,
And
you didn't hear him say he's gonna read it all and
He's going to try and put them in a chronological order of some fashion.
Right.
I did not hear him say that he was going to take my comments and change them, in all fairness to Dave.
Well, yeah, in fairness to
Okay.
Dave, but he didn't say he wasn't going to either.
Well,
They also said he was
believe
going to
me,
distribute
I-
everybody's comments to all board members.
I don't think that will happen.
John.
Okay, well, I just might.
And I appreciate that because I do not believe, having been involved around some of these things, they take a little while to work out, okay? They do. And
Okay.
we'll just have to work on it.
Right,
John.
done, I'm done.
Yes, sir.
Leighton Moore has,
Say your name.
William Conley, 2 Marview Drive, I'm not going to give you my phone number.
I don't like the legs anyway, so I mean.
Leighton Moore has submitted a lease to you all. That's the best lease that he wants. You need to submit a lease back to him, the best that you want. And in order to do that, you're going to have to talk to a commercial real estate lawyer. Going in between, I'm not familiar with that procedure. If you buy a house, the purchaser submits a contract. The seller doesn't go to the purchaser and say, let's discuss this. I don't like this point, or this point. You have your attorney submit a lease that y'all want.
Negotiations are negotiations that can take any kind of form.
We're talking about real estate.
We don't want to.
I'm not familiar with the way y'all are doing.
I like that way too, but it's, it'll be for.
Well,
I'm not in favor of this
who
at
are you?
all.
Who are you?
I am Gail Kretschmar, 3 Trinity Place, Ocean Pines, Maryland, sometimes of Downingtown, Pennsylvania. I am not in favor of this at all. And I think the first thing that the board, I have to agree with Norm, the board has to do is decide which ones of you are in favor of any kind of a lease and which ones are not. I've heard possibly 3 people who are not in favor of any kind of a lease. But I also hear others that say, well, if we can get a good enough lease, and the determination is what is a good enough lease. So are you in favor or are you not in favor of the lease? That's what this board has to determine. Second, you do not need to go to referendum if you, the board, decides you don't want a lease. You don't have to turn around and send it back to the membership and say, well, we don't think it's a good idea, but we want you to tell us what to do. I'm sorry, but we elected you, and that's what we asked you to do. So you are the ones who have to make the decision. If you decide that you want to have a lease, and it's a good enough lease for 4 of you, then if it is worth 20% of the current annual income, then you have to go to referendum. Otherwise, you do not.
That's correct. That's our intent, exactly.
Thank you.
But if I may give you an answer, if you go along with standard real estate practice, which what Mr. Conley suggested, any valid offer is normally required to be presented to the owner. In my opinion, this is not the case, but in Marty's opinion, I think it is. So the board would have to agree to that.
We're not the owners.
Right, that's what I'm saying.
Association members are not the owners.
You're not, right, but neither are we. But anyway, but there's counter arguments, but I agree with you 100% on that.
You said we don't have to have a referendum. Oh,
I'm just trying to follow the order.
Who are you?
Would you give me an opportunity? Joe Ruddis, 84 Watertown Road. I think we've all entered the twilight zone. I think any independent person, totally outside Ocean Pines, that didn't have a clue what was going on here, if they could sit here and listen to this discussion, one conclusion I think they would have to come to is that Dave Stevens appears almost like he's acting as a lobbyist for secrets. Now, that's a harsh thing to say, but I got to tell you, everything Dave says is we have to push this, we have to push this, we have to get this done. Well, here's a man, an outside businessman, who comes to our association and says, I want a 99-year lease on your property. That was 6 months or more ago. The board met, the lease was made public, I had a copy of it. John asked some questions, then the board told Tom to go back and start negotiations, and then Tom reported some months later the negotiations stopped, because Layton decided he didn't want to do it, and maybe get back to us in the spring. Now he's gotten back to us. Layton is driving this thing. We jump hoops. As soon as he says jump, we jump. And Stevens is at the head of the jumping line. He's running the conga line. This whole thing is absolutely ridiculous. Give me one moment, please.
Time's up.
I brought up the issue of encroachment some time back. Now we have confirmation that there is encroachment. This board, from what I've seen and what Dave said, essentially, so what? Well, look, if you owned a piece of property and somebody built something on your property, I think we ought to be upset. But we're not upset at Layton Moore because we're cheerleaders for Layton Moore. We want to make a deal with it.
Stop it.
Dave says that the whole issue is too important to discuss. Ray's right. What the hell is so important? We don't have to do this deal, but we're approaching it as if we have to do it. Somebody up there on the board said, we have to discuss what we want in our proposal. It's almost as though Layton Moore has convinced this board of directors that we're the ones that want to make the deal. Absolutely incredible. Absolutely incredible. The issue of what the property is worth, Moore pointed out, is $2.2 million. We've been paying taxes on $2.2 million.
More has. We haven't been taxed for 8 years.
It's valued, or it's taxed at $2.2 million. Marty, you're another cheerleader as far as I'm concerned in this whole thing, because you get it to him at any price you offer. He offered $500,000 you probably take it. $1.5 million you probably take it. But that's beside the point.
I'd take it to the membership.
$2.2 million. Or whatever it's worth, supposedly. Why hasn't someone been down at the county complaining, or the state, that it's not worth that much money? Now, we're willing to take what amounts to a sale for half of that. And it seems to me, and again, it's part of negotiation, but if the deal is now 5 years to get the money instead of 2.
Excuse me. When did anybody say we were willing to take this? When, Joe?
No one said you're willing to take that, but, this has been going on for a long time now. What are we willing to take?
That's what we want to find out.
I've got it.
Find out. No.
3 times today it's been said it's a $1 million lease. It is not a $1 million lease. It's a $4 million lease plus CPI, plus cost of money. But today, if we didn't have one increase in rent for the next 99 years, it's $4 million, not $1 million, $4 million.
You're talking about the lease that we have going now plus the million.
You got that for 5 more years. It's a $4 million lease, Joe, not $1 million.
Mark, I think you ought to just approve this. What happened to your idea of getting $1 million and giving it back to the homeowners? I heard you.
We haven't gotten to a lease yet. We haven't gotten to a lease yet.
That's in conclusion. Ocean Pines is in perpetuity. Our only value is our property. Why we should be selling off this property, which at some point in time, if not now, the combination of the Bayside and the ocean side may be worth more as a group than they are separately. We don't know that. We will never know that until whatever transpires happens to transpire. But we're selling what amounts to a birthright of this association for nickels on the dollar, simply because I don't know why we're trying to do this.
We are
over the
all
five.
not trying to.
Thank you.
Dutch,
Well, you know, what he said, Lovett.
Dutch, tell us,
If we do.
Dutch, give us your name and address.
You got to identify yourself on your property.
Give Phyllis your name and address.
Oh, I'm sorry. Old Spade, 12th floor guy. Ocean Pine 2181. No, what I'm concerned about is, I want, if we sell, if we do, I don't want to go to West Orlando. Well, I want to be sure, I'm just saying, if we get $1 million, I'm Marty saying $4 million. I want to know what we're exactly going to do with that money. What that money is used for. I don't want no more that money misused like it is done here. That's what I'm fighting you people on. I want to exactly know what was, like he said, let the people, some money back, coming to the people. If we sell it, I want to have you people stop all charging money more for the next 5-10 years. That is what I want in that referendum market. The people know where the money goes to. We wasting too much money here. And what Norman said, what is the value today from that piece of property? How many acres is it? I don't know. What is our value on that piece of property today? This guy is like you said, he maybe built a big hotel, makes $10 million a year. He gives us $50,000 every year.
37.
It's ridiculous what's going on. I like to live in Ocean Pine. I like to pay my dues, but there have to be a limit. We bleeding to death. We got the wrong management. And that is my platform when I run for office. Get rid of the management.
Thank you, Dutch. Anyone else?
My name is Carol Mills. I live at 32 Falcon Ridge Road. Don't even get me started. But are you trying, it's like you're trying to sell your soul, the soul being that Bayside parking lot. For what? Has it ever occurred to anybody to try to find out why they suddenly want that property and total control over it for 99 years? They don't want to just have it. There's got to be a reason. They've got to have plans. And I think we ought to be finding out why. Why behind all this, instead of talking about, well, should we vote on it or should we not vote on it? Or how much, or how much? There's something behind it all, and you're not finding out. And that should be part of your job, is to find out why.
That's partly why we're proposing to meet with them to determine things like that, and what effect those things may have on us.
Probably should have done that before this. Yeah, unless I think of something else.
I'm with her, I'm Jim Mills. Section 344. I feel the same as she does on it as far as getting rid of property. I've become very dubious about Ocean Pines property and how it's been handled in the past. I'm sure most of you know, maybe some of you don't know, in 1995, we were offered 80 acres of property to build an executive golf course. At that time, in hindsight, it's a good thing we didn't. But at that time, we felt that golf was heavily oversubscribed. In the year 1994, we had between 54,000 and 57,000 rounds of golf on this golf course. Board of directors at that time, not the board of directors, but the board of governors at that time were absolutely convinced we needed another golf course. And through a couple different negotiations, it ended up with a man named Smith with the Balfour Corporation came forth and said, we think you need another golf course too, and we're going to give you 80 acres for you to build a golf course. Now, it'll be up to you to build a golf course. We're not going to do it for you, but we'll give you 80 acres. We'll give you 5 years to do this. And in that 5 years, when that 5 years is up, if you haven't built a golf course, we're going to give you 40 acres for a park. We're going to take the other 40 acres and put houses on it. They actually had a route plan for the golf course, which one of our reporters wrote an article in 1995 in the Independent, which you can all look up, about the whole deal from the beginning to the end. So nothing was really heard of this. I mean, everything was sort of done in secret, like a lot of our boards have been. So in 2003, I believe it was, somebody said, whatever happened to our 40-acre park? And I said, gee, I don't know, but I'll call Mr. Ferguson and see what happened. So I sent Mr. Ferguson an email. And I said, where's our 40-acre park? It was going to be in the park, P-A-R-K-E. And he says, oh, I never heard of such a thing, but I'll look it up and I'll let you know. And he sent me an email back and said, well, it turns out that the 40 acres have become the ditches in the park. And I said, are you kidding me? The ditches in the park? I mean, it was supposed to be 40 contiguous acres for a park for Ocean Pines. He said, well, you want to come over and look at the route plan? What they've done with it, I can show it to you. And the plan is on file in the office. And I went over and looked at the plan, and sure enough, here it is, every ditch in the park. I guess if you added them all together, they would add up to 40 acres, but that's what happened to our park. Now, that's why I'm very dubious about any land that Ocean Pines owns and what is done with it. And I think you want to proceed with very much caution in this deal about a 99-year lease. Now, my opinion is Mr. Moore, if he's going to continue to use that as a parking lot for 99 years, why would he be willing to give us $1 million for it? He's got an acceptable lease that he's had for 15 years, and we're willing to extend it for probably 99 more years. It's my own humble opinion that, something like the English Diner might end up right on the front of that property. but what do I know? I'm just an Indian on the reservation. So anyhow, I just want you to let you know that I'd like you to proceed with the ultimate caution on this deal and look at every aspect of it. There's more to it than just Mr. Moore wanting to be sure he has a parking lot for 99 years, because he's not going to be around 99 years, and nobody in Ocean Pines is going to be around in 99 years. And that's all I have to say.
Thank you.
Who's going to negotiate that contract with the mayor? Are you people? You're 7 people. Are you going to, who's negotiating if that mayor comes with a proposal?
That's what we've been talking about.
That's why they're over. Is the lawyer, Mr. Moore, a lawyer going to do it, or who are you people?
It's going to be a combination of, to begin with, the 7 members of this board. And the 7 members of this board have spoken today about putting together a team of people from Ocean Pines, a small team, who have expertise in contract negotiation to do the final negotiations. And all of this, of course, would also be reviewed by attorneys.
And see, I'm coming back to another story. What we people had got a very bad deal on was on TV. If you all know how we were sold out, the man who negotiated that contract 3 months later when everything was ready, he left Ocean Pine and he got a vice president job with the TV, and now he's stuck with it. I don't want to happen that now happen again, that there's any conflict of interest.
Yeah, that's...
You understand what I mean? I want to have no conflict of interest.
That's off the subject of this meeting.
It really isn't. I still think it's pertinent to any negotiation you're doing. It seems like it's been confirmed today that Seegers has built a fence or whatever part of our property. I think that's like taking an easement for nothing. Usually you get paid for an easement. I think that if we're going to allow that easement in the negotiations, I think that we should be getting something for that, for the past use of it, as well as forward use of it. I ask the board to consider that.
I'm Sharon Conley. I live at 2 Moorview Drive, 21811. And I just want to reiterate that what we're talking about is not just a little patch of gravel. This is the tax record from Maryland. It's 7/10 of an acre of waterfront property that fronts in Coastal Highway. It's zoned commercial. Its phase-in tax value is $3 million. And it's not just a little, I mean, at the end of 4 years, you could say, we want to make more out of there, we could do something with it ourselves. It's a commercial piece of property in a resort waterfront community that fronts on Coastal Highway and on the bay, and it's a very valuable piece of property across from someone else that our other valuable piece of property. And they could be put together or not to use for something else, but it's not just a little gravel parking lot. It's a very important piece, one of the few undeveloped pieces of property left in that area. That's what we're talking about. That's why it's important, because we own something of great value.
2/3 of which are wetlands.
Yeah, there's nothing to be done back on that.
But it's still a property of great value.
Quickly?
How about when you put this committee together, along with the people with expertise on real estate and whatnot, throw in a couple people with common sense.
Hard to find.
Pete has something.
Pete has a phone over there.
Yeah, Judge.
I'll get to you in a minute. George?
Just to say, where are you going to get them? I'd like to commiserate with this board. I'm glad I'm not on it anymore. I could make my background a lot of comments, because I think we've been here long enough and we've heard similar opinions to what I would express, just in a different way. But I would ask you to remember 2 things. What happened to Troy when they let the Greek horse in and the YMCA property?
I'm Pete Gomzak, 417 Blue Water Court, and I am a candidate, one of those apparently unknown candidates for the board. And I'm all in favor of common sense, and I'll tell you that. Let me just offer a couple comments quickly. Number one, as a new board member, this board is going to be comprised of either 5 or 6 people that are here today represented. So it's not a big change in the board. So as a candidate, I'm not concerned that the board is addressing these matters. I think it needs to move forward and address them. Frankly, I would prefer to see this addressed a long time ago rather than here we are 6 months after it first got discussed back in the winter. But we can't change that. In any event, I'm not concerned that the board is doing its job. I think it has a responsibility to address this. It should not hurry it up because of a new board, a couple of people, 1 or 2 coming on the board or not. Secondly, the comments about referendum, I hear you, I know what the right answer is. I would simply say this, I think it's disingenuous to say it's got to go back to a referendum and let the people decide. I think the people are owed a complete explanation and a lot of facts. I think it's unfair to the members to throw at them an issue and say, hey, decide. You all as a board, and if I'm fortunate enough to be elected to that board, will certainly hope to do an awful lot of homework and have an awful lot of facts that I can share with the membership before asking them to weigh in. I think it's unfair to just dump a bunch of information on them and say, you decide. I think the board has a responsibility there. Thirdly, I've heard an awful lot of talk about the lease. And indeed, it is a 99-year lease. But there's a hell of a difference between a 99-year lease and just a normal operating lease. Effectively, we're transferring ownership of that property. And I think it's equivalent to a sale or disposition of the property. I think Ray Unger referred to that in his opening comment. So let's get at the notion of a lease with rental income out of our heads. We're effectively transferring ownership of that property when you enter into a 99-year lease. And lastly, I would say it's a tough decision. I think I support philosophically that you don't dispose of your property unless there's a very real and compelling reason to do so. I don't know what all the facts are. Ladies and gentlemen, I don't have any more facts as a member of the public than you do. Although I serve on the Budget and Finance Committee, we have not had that issue come to us. It's been a board matter, and I think appropriately so. It's sensitive negotiations and so forth. So I don't have any inside information, any additional information than you all do. But philosophically, I'll be very, very cautious, as many of you have suggested, about embarking upon essentially the disposition of what could be a very, very valuable, what is and will continue to be hopefully a very valuable piece of our real estate holdings that we all the members own. And so I just hope the board gets to understand the big picture. I think in the 6 months that's intervened since this first came up, or maybe it's been longer, we don't have that big picture. There's been speculation about this or that, or what Leighton Moore does or doesn't know. I said a long time ago at a public meeting, I think back in January, that what we really needed to do, what the board needed to do on behalf of the community, was get more information. And I think that need still exists, and I think this maybe puts you on the path of trying to get that big picture information to allow us to see what's really at stake here. Perhaps there is a hotel chain out there. Perhaps there are several. I don't know, you don't know. I don't think the board knows. But we need to understand the big picture before we pull the trigger and decide, A, on referendum, and B, what to recommend to the public. So those are my comments, and thank you for listening.
Thanks, Pete. Anyone else? Seeing none? Steve still here?
I'm here.
Hey!
Still awake, huh?
I'm still awake.
All right.
Bless.
We have a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.